Humza Yousaf was the most, in my opinion, most blatant example of a very clearly racist and angrily spoken speech from someone who in that time was serving as First Minister of Scotland. That on white, so aggressive. And people have tried to explain that to me, going, no, but he was responding because somebody was talking. I don't care what he was responding about. It was the point he made. So he wasn't arrested. And I feel like if I'd gone in the street and said that, black, Jewish, gay, any of those things, I'd be, I don't know. I was going to say rightfully locked up, but I actually don't know what I think about rightfully or not.
I don't think it should be rightfully. I mean, I actually do think you should be able to say the things you want to say and not be punished for it, because I'm quite old-fashioned. But that's exactly the point. Humza Yousaf, there was a bill in Scotland that recently passed. I can't remember what it was called, but it's essentially some kind of online harms bill variant where it's concerned about race hatred and things like that. And he got thousands of complaints about that speech under that bill.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do things retroactively, so nothing could come of it. But people are aware that these laws are used in one direction. They're not omnidirectional. They're not universal laws for everyone. This is the race hatred laws are a really clear example of two-tier policing, in fact, because all of, for example, the grooming gangs, they're all underpinned by a kind of ethnic resentment and contempt. That it was done to English girls because they were vulnerable English girls. And a lot of the victims will come out and say to you, they call me a white slag and things like this. So there'd be open race hatred involved. There was one case, I can't remember the name of the lady, but she was essentially told to stand in the middle of the room and just not look at the ground because she wasn't allowed to look at the Muslim men and things like this. So it's worse than you would think, but there's obviously the dimension of race hatred in there. And of course, this is not the crime that they're being convicted on, because these are sort of amplifiers to the sentences that people would otherwise get, but they're not added on. And so these people will be out in 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, rather than a much longer sentence. If it were an English person doing the same thing with the same contempt in their hearts. And so I think people are becoming aware that, we live in quite a tyrannical society that is actually racial and racialized. It penalizes white people and doesn't penalize non-white people for certain things that they say. And that's just self-evident at this point.
This is the two tiers that people speak of.
Yeah. People have an understandable habit of saying, well, look at this institution, look at this institution, look at this institution. It's like the police, the RAF, the government, the courts, almost anything, But focusing on the institution is a bit of a red herring, because the institutions just operate in the way that the ideology of the people who control them dictates. And so the real issue is, why are our institutions controlled by an ideology that is against the native white British population and in favor of non-white, non-native foreign populations? This is the schism, the dividing line, upon which the axis around they rotate. And so they will say the white person doesn't get the grace that the non-white person gets. And okay, why should that be? Why are we in this country? I thought this was our country. Why should we be treated as second-class citizens by all of the institutions in favor of newly arrived people? I'm not saying that they can't have arrived or anything like that, but why do we have to be made essentially subject people on their behalf? It's not fair.
Of course, many non-white people have been here for centuries.
I'm not arguing the case on that. I'm suggesting that there should be one rule for all.
Yes, yes,
and not that any non-white people who are here should be given legal and political advantages over white people who have been here.
Does this come from a feeling of in the institutions or the ideologies that prop them up, just wanting to not be racist so much? That's the incentive?
Yeah, it's the philosophy of anti-racism itself that is the problem, because you could simply operate merit-based institutions that just said, okay, well, this guy has great qualifications, had a good interview, we'll hire that guy because he seems good. But the RAF are the best example of this, where they said that they were getting, quote, useless white male applicants to be pilots. They weren't useless as pilots. What they were useless for is their diversity quotas. They were white men. They couldn't improve the DEI standards that for some reason the RAF has.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I mean, and you know my own history with the BBC
I do,
and everything.
Yeah.
It's probably what's the word? Red pilled me. You know, I'm still feeling my way.
No, I totally understand. But this is the issue. There is a reigning ideology that is intersectionality, but it manifests in what people recognize as anti-racism, that seeks to abolish any class or distinction between groups of people. But that's actually kind of crazy when you think about it. Why would Humza Yousaf's white speech is the great example. He is a Pakistani man. His parents go over to Scotland for God only knows what reason. He's born and raised in Scotland, and he looks around and finds that all of the great officers of state in Scotland are filled by Scottish people. So yes, that is what you'd expect. But Humza Yousaf, you notice the spitting hatred. White, how dare you not be the multiculti United Colours of Benetton advert that I expected to come in. You knew what there was going to be. He was just using it as a cudgel against those people, because they'd be like, oh God, well, we don't hate brown people. It's like, we know you don't hate brown people. Why are we even having this conversation? Like, this wasn't an issue, and you knew it wasn't an issue, and this bad faith actor has come in and made it an issue. Don't engage with it.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. I often think about going to Argentina. I was over there, and I imagine just saying like, well, why aren't there any English,
Exactly.
such and such? Or even, I mean, there was that, what's his name? Nihal, the radio presenter, was upset that at the BBC there aren't enough brown people.
Really?
There, and he
Find it hard to believe, to be honest.
Well, firstly. And secondly, like he said he was the only brown person in the office. I was often the only Jewish person. I was also often the only tall person in the office. Like, none of these things bothered me. I actually quite liked all the differences and all of these things, you know? And by the way, being tall, and that is a thing, right? And because I know people say, oh, I'd like to be tall. Firstly, every time you've nearly banged your head, like by an inch, you know, in that instance, I have banged my head. So it's been a lot of head banging. And then also, when I go to a concert or something, I actually get anxious because I think, oh, people behind me aren't going to be able to see.
Yeah, you're blocking their view.
Yeah, I'm blocking their view. And I think there's a point to be made that a lot of people who've got, obviously not being too tall or whatever it is, but they've got different issues like, oh, I'm a different skin color, or I'm trans, I need to be in different changing rooms and things like that. They want the world to change for them. Yeah. And I think that's this new really entitled thing, whereas I think, oh God, I am too tall. Like, that's just life. I am too tall for people to be able to enjoy a concert if they're sitting behind me. I feel bad. I'm going to hunch my shoulders now and move a bit out of the way. Yeah. People want everything just to move for them.
Well, it's about being considerate for others, or at least it used to be. The main consideration that people had was for other people, but now it's just for themselves. And we've moved into this kind of very solipsistic position in society where when there's one group that's a coalition of groups that's saying we want all of the things that we want, and there's a group that says I want to be considerate of others, well, one group gains and the other group loses, and it's very obvious that that's going to be the case. And so there are probably a lot of English people out there at the moment thinking, you know what, I'm actually not that concerned for others at this point. I'm not actually interested in showing too much consideration for people who have shown me no consideration. And it's hard to tell them that's unreasonable, actually. It's hard to say, well, no, you must continue to give good graces to these people who are just going to continue taking and give you nothing in return. There's no compelling argument as to why they should do that.
Yeah. It's so sad that the concept of colorblindness, the Martin Luther King stuff.
Oh yeah, that's all gone.
It's such a shame. When Nihal or Humza Yousaf, when they bring attention to that, what are we supposed to do other than now think, okay, how many white people are there here, and how many white people are? Well, there are a lot more white people in Scotland. Now suddenly I'm thinking about it. It's bizarre.